Thank you for coming on and wanting to share your story. Just a quick back brief of who I am. Isaac Bala Haja, born and raised in Guam. Yeah, I went to from elementary all the way to high school. Stayed on the island,
Yeah,
kind of like when I was 24, I was like, you know what, it's time for me to move. So I moved out to the States when I was 24. I'm 31 now.
love
And
that.
I just never went back home. Yeah, I was scrolling through Instagram and I came across your page, man. It was like so heartwarming to hear that, like, it's other people out there that are not just feeling the same way as I felt. I'm taking a chance on myself, and we talked briefly about it yesterday. Um, so this is why I started this podcast, because I went home 2 years ago. I went home and I was speaking to my childhood friend, and the one thing that kind of stuck out to me with him was like he's kind of like me. He's very adventurous and stuff, but he's very scared of opening doors.
Mhm.
And, he didn't wanna open a door, he didn't wanna leave the island, so kinda just stayed and, just worked for Gov Guam, very good job, but then one day I think he just kinda realized where he was just going into that time lapse of, like, he felt that time was just, like, just a day to day now, like, everything's just wake up, do it again, wake up, do it again, and he took a chance on himself. He came out and he's actually, like, doing really good. He stays in Washington now, Washington State, doing really well, and, man, super, super excited. So I was like, you know what, man, these stories like that kind of I want to, tell other people's stories, and
You wanna, yeah, bring it
it's
to
like
life.
what you said. Yeah, it's like you said, you put yourself out there and you're like, you know what, hey, there's probably no one that looks like us or thinks like us in the housing market in Arizona. So why don't I try it out, and I'm pretty successful. And I
Yeah.
see your pages and stuff.
Yes, yes, it is. And for me, so I've been out here in Arizona for 24 years now. So I've been here for a long time, but there's never a day that goes by that I'm not mahaling. I don't miss my mom and my dad still live in Guam, and it's hard, right? It's tough for us who born and raised in Guam to move out to unfamiliar places where the culture is so different. We're not used to it. And I didn't start my real estate journey right away when I got to Arizona. I was actually in title and escrow. And I worked in title and escrow in Guam for gosh, a few years. I actually helped start Security Title of Guam. I was like one of the three first employees hired. And so it kind of helped build up their database. And when I came out here, that was my thought was I'm going to get into title and escrow here in the States. And that was kind of my career path, right? And taking that. But then after 18 years of doing title and escrow, you just because you can fall complacent even out here in the States, right? Guam is just it's a smaller area and not much opportunity, but you can totally fall complacent in the States as well. And that's kind of where I found myself. I actually went back to school. I got my bachelor's degree and thought, let me climb the corporate ladder of the title and escrow world. And when I got to the top and I sat at the table with all the executives, I discovered this wasn't me. I don't want this. It was a totally different perception from when I was working down at the bottom, and I thought that when I made it to the top, I was going to enjoy it. I was traveling, but then that traveling became leaving my family, all week, seeing them on the weekend, going back out, flying again. And that just wasn't what I had expected. And the way that I fell into real estate was it goes hand in hand with title and escrow. But my daughter fell ill in 2017, and that required, me and my husband, one of us to always kind of be at her side 24/7, right? And with a job like what I had, that wasn't possible. So it came down to what do I'm not choosing. I'm staying with my daughter. But then that became, how do I feed my family now? Right? It's like it's feast or famine, but I knew that, I needed to take care of my daughter first and foremost. And so then that was when real estate kind of popped up in my head. It's kind of goes hand in hand with title and escrow. I kind of already knew the ins and outs. But now I was stepping into more of a sales and marketing role, right? And that's what led me to real estate. was the situation with my daughter, but then also realizing and knowing that I could create something out of this and I can help so many more people, which is what my passion was to help as many people as I could. And then when it came to helping Chamorros, that wasn't my first, even 24 years ago, or I should say even 9 years ago when I got into real estate, I didn't know many Chamorros in Arizona. I didn't even know we had a big enough community. And so
Yeah.
those weren't my first, that wasn't my first niche. I stumbled across on one of my lead generation platforms, an individual, she was asking about buying a home. And I looked at her last name and I'm like, she's got to be Chamorro. I'm like, she's got to be Chamorro, right? But it could have been, she could have been Hispanic too. So I just asked her, and then I started snooping around her Facebook. I was like, oh yeah, Chamorro.
So
Doesn't everybody
so
do that? Am I the only
so
one?
what was going back home to the island, right? What gave you what prompted you to leave? Like what was that enticing like feeling that like, hey, I want more for my family or myself? Like,
Yeah, good
because
question.
that
Yeah, so for me, it was I had enlisted in the Air Force when I was 20 years old, and I was getting ready. I signed up, signed all the papers, getting ready to ship out, and then found out I was going to be a mom. So then I had to go through the whole discharge, and that wasn't the path. But I knew though I was going to be a mom now. So things are going to change regardless. And I had always worked for strong, really powerful women, really inspiring women. Every job that I was at was actually ran by a female. And I used to always be inspired by these women who were so smart, just so courageous in industries that are mainly men led, right? And that inspired me to be like, you know what? I know I could do more. I know I could be more, but I may not be able to do that here in Guam. And then when I found out I was having a daughter, I was like, okay, yeah, you know what? I want to give her more. I want to do more. And that is what kind of propelled me to just go all in and go for it and leave home because I wanted to provide more for her. And I didn't want to depend on my family. I didn't want to be living with my family and rely on them, for whatever, right? I wanted to do this on my own. I knew it was going to be tough because where I was going was, we didn't have a whole lot of family. I didn't have a whole lot of family out here, not close knit family like back in Guam. And so, and us Chamorros, when it comes to asking for help, we're just so we don't, right?
we don't, yeah,
And then we're
yeah,
taught in our culture, hey, if you can't do it, if you don't have it, then don't ask, right?
yeah.
So that's always been the mentality when I was growing up but I said, you know what? I can do this. I can find I know what I'm doing. I've built that skill when I was back in Guam working in title. I was a title examiner. Well, they called it in Guam title researcher. And I said, there's title companies, in the States. Like, why can't I just relocate and do my job out there. So that's what I did. I started applying with different title companies in California. Arizona was it was my second choice. It wasn't my first choice. I actually thought we were going to live in California and I would just, work somewhere in California. But then I got a call from a title company in Arizona that wanted to interview me. And I was like, okay, let's go check it out. Man, it was like hitting the jackpot. When they told me how much they were going to pay me, I was like, I left Guam making $9 an hour.
I believe it. I believe
Yeah.
my mom, when she was working, I remember her, I remember asking her, I was like, "Mom, how much do you make an hour?" And I was, just back in I was in elementary, she was like, 7.25, and I was like, 7.25, but I didn't really think about it, like, back then because I was a little kid, and 7.25 on Guam, that's a lot of money,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they come out here and they're like, "How much do you make?" "Oh, they're like, it's like 10.70." I'm like, "Whoa, what?" It's crazy. I
Yeah.
believe it.
Yeah, I kid you. I was making more than double what I left Guam, and that was the beginner pay, you know? And I was like, "What?
Wow.
Jackpot." So anyways, and I started through humble beginnings, right? Like I didn't go for, the big house, the luxurious cars. I worked my way to get there, I got a little, one bedroom apartment. Like I wouldn't say it was ghetto, but I don't know. I wouldn't live back there today if I had a choice, you know what I'm saying? But it was mine. It was what I worked for. It was a start, right? Because back in Guam, that's so hard to say. That's so hard to say that I have an apartment, you know? So hard to
It
say
is.
that I'm out on my own, I'm renting because majority of people had to live with family, right? They
Yep,
had they
yep.
had to start by living with family and some still do today because of just the cost of living. But it really taught me independence, responsibility, and grind, just hustle and grind and work your ass off, because the bigger picture, that was the goal, right? Was always the bigger picture. But yeah, I mean, I did that. I did that for a couple years, here in Arizona. And it wasn't until, so my family consists of his, hers, and ours, so when I first came to Arizona, I had two kids of my own through a previous relationship and then met my husband. He had two kids of his own, and then we have two
Wow.
kids together now.
So a blended family.
Yeah, so we are a blended family. And yeah, so that was kind of the journey. And I tell so many people who reach out to me, about the relocation process. How do you go about doing it? What do we have to do? And it's so good to be able to guide them because of my journey, right? And how I got here. It's exactly the same for so many that are relocating from Guam or the Northern Mariana Islands, right? We don't know anything about Arizona, but we know we want to move there. We got a lot of family there, right? And so helping our people, to navigate that process of the job market, how it works out here, the culture, because the culture can be very shocking. It is not.
100%, yeah. When I moved from Guam to Georgia, it was like I moved with $9 in my pocket and just a very like just like put my head start the ground running, like just kept running. And just like I was 24 with my own apartment and it was a studio and I was just like, this is cool. I got my own space, and all my friends were just like, "Dude, you're doing it." I'm like, "Yeah," but I had some hard times, Definitely what you're saying, the culture, like I definitely yes, I look African American and yes, I fit in, right, with whatever my friends, but whatever they talk about and stuff, like I wasn't raised here, so I don't, I always try to tell them like, I don't understand that when they're like, "Oh man, wasn't that a racist comment?" I'm like, I don't really know what racist is, like I only know like two races, like either you're Chamorro Filipino or you're part of the other islands, right? Yappies or Chukis or Kushrai. I only know those like race. I don't know like white, black, Hispanic. I don't know any of that, and they were thinking I was like joking, but I was like, nah, man, like I really don't, and then they met my mom and like, oh dude, your mom's like super Chamorro. I'm like, yeah, she's a Chamorro woman that really like cause she like my mom had this broken English where she like mixes Chamorro words with English words,
Yes.
and when she moved out here,
Aw.
with my sister, my friends were like, "Dang, you really are Chamorro." And I'm like, "Yeah, man." Like, I was raised by my mother, a single mother, man. Like, you wanna talk about being a rock, like, this lady been through hell and back, like, she just to provide for me and my siblings, and the culture difference is just, like, I had to wrap my head around. Now I stay in Denver, and it's a different culture again, This is so, like, just extra.
Right?
and
Yes.
I'm still trying to adapt to it, so when you
Right.
talk about culture, it's I understand.
Mhm. Yes, it is a culture shock, just we're so used to hospitality in Guam and helping others and saying hi when you pass by people and you're just I don't know how to say no. It's like
My
I'm
wife has a
in
problem
yeah,
my wife has a problem, yeah, my wife has a problem with me doing that because, like, some of my friends will be like, "Oh, I'm moving," and I'll be like, "When you moving?" "On the 23rd." "I'm coming over to help." My wife's like, "What? You're gonna just go over and help?" I'm like, "Yeah, man," like, I don't know, people's problems always become my problem, or, like, one of my friends is like, "Man, I need to save up for rent money." I was like, "How about you have a room here? Why don't you just stay here for 2 months and get your money and then go, get for your security deposit and save some money, like, go ahead," and he's like my wife's like, "Man, you're, like, always helping someone." I'm like, "Yeah, it is this is just what it is, you know?"
that's our genetic it's our genetic makeup. It's in us, and it could be a great thing, but then at the same time, that's one of the reasons why I left Guam, right? Because, I needed to be able to do something for myself and build something for myself because, I lived with my dad for a little bit and, he was the only provider in the family. And while he made very good money, working civil service and he was active or he was in the guard. And so, he did well for himself. But when you're living with somebody, you are obligated, or at least I felt obligated as the oldest child to contribute, right? Anything I could to the house. And it was very little to save because, you want to help your parents, right? And I just knew that now that I'm going to be expecting a daughter, I have this responsibility now, and I have to create and I have to show her that, there's so much more out there in the world for her. But the only way I was going to do that was to get out of my comfort zone and to go to a place where I didn't have a choice. I didn't have family. I had to figure it out, and I love to share that message with so many people that just feel stuck, and feel like this is what it is and they just have to deal with it, and it's scary at first, right? It's a scary transition into going to places where it doesn't have your culture, it doesn't have your family, you don't have the comforts of driving 5 minutes to a family and eating or hanging out.
Yeah,
This out here is, every man for himself, really, and then real estate on top of that, it's a dog eat dog world. I'm telling you right now. So, but it's I love what you're doing. First of all, like I love meeting other Chamorros. I love hearing stories of what they're doing, small businesses, when they've achieved success and what they've been able to create, especially coming from a small island. I look at us as we're minority of the minorities.
yeah,
There are not very many Chamorros in the world, and so every time a Chamorro is in the spotlight, that is a cause for a celebration to lift up all our Chamorro brothers and sisters and to support them because we don't ever get that. We don't ever get to be put on a spotlight because of where we come from and who we are. There's just not that many of us. So yeah, so I love being able to any Chamorro entrepreneur or business person that comes to me and wants to do a collaboration. I'm like, hell yeah, let's do it. What do I gotta do?
wow.
How do I support you?
No, I like that, I find the beauty in that, I've come across a lot of second generation Chamorros here, especially in Vegas, where they're like, "Oh yeah, I never been to Guam," but I'm like, "Hey, you need to carry that pride though." You know what I mean? Your parents paved the way out here for you to succeed and look at you, you're succeeding. But don't you need to sit with your parents and listen to them and hear their stories, and that's a lot. That's one thing that I've kind of regret a little bit is documenting the stories my mom told me, because there's a lot of times in Silahania where we sat outside in the front yard and mosquitoes
Wait, she's
biting
from
you.
Senanya?
Yeah, yeah, I'm from Silahania. Yep.
Family's from Senanya. She
Yeah,
probably knows
boy.
my family.
Yeah, yeah, I live, down the street from, Walmart. It used to be called Walmart, from CL Tunnel. So where Josh Tenorio's parents stay down the street, the lieutenant governor, I
Yeah.
stay down the street from there. That
So
four-way
you're closer to,
intersection.
like, Bishop Baumgartner and
Yes, yeah, yeah, down the street from Bishop from Gardner, the
almost,
first
yeah,
four-way.
almost by Dania Heights area.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
yeah. So
Nice.
I stayed there, like, the whole life, that was my grandma's house, and, my mom inherited it, and she took over it, and we just stayed there for till I went to GW and graduated and stuff.
Yeah, GW
But
alumni here too.
the one thing that I do regret is not I wish I had this knowledge of, like, having a podcast and talking about stories, because I would love to have my mom on here, you know what I mean, and document the good old days, you know what I mean, like, sitting in front of the house, with the power's out and the mosquitoes biting, with the smell of mosquito coil, the green mosquito coil on the can, burning, and just, the windows are open, and you're just having good times with, underneath a candlelight playing cards. You know what I mean? Those were the good old days I enjoyed, but I wish I was able to document those things with my parents, and I tell a lot of the second generation, Chamorros that stay out here, I'm like, with the kids, I'm like, "Dude, your parents still alive and they're around, like, document it, like, talk to them, ask them how it was, and maybe one day, even when you can, 'cause it's expensive, go with your parents back home. Like,
Mhm.
go take that trip home, you know what I mean? Like, as much as you say that you never been there, and you're just part of you, it's your culture, it's who you are, you know what I mean? You have to go see where you come from, you have to see where your parents grew up, you know?
And I think it's so
Well,
different too, the experiences of the Chamorros out here in the States, and don't get me wrong, I love every state I feel has their get-togethers, gatherings, they celebrate, whether it's liberation or there's a Chamorro Fest, I think that's coming up here soon. And I love that, because it does bring a little bit of back home here to the States, right? But it is a difference, right, on how we celebrate. When we celebrate back in Guam, just the sounds of the music and everybody laughing, speaking Chamorro, and I don't know about you, but my uncles are crazy, so they will put everybody down, they will make everybody laugh, and everyone's drinking, but it's a good old time, right? It's a good old time with the food and like you said, just sitting there playing cards or just everybody around the table, all the manamkul. And it's such a feeling that, man, I wish my kids could have experienced, you know, growing up. But, it is what it is, but it is through us, as their parents, the ones that who have lived it and the ones who carry that from their parents and grandparents to share those stories. I always tell my kids, I always reminisce about the good old days. And I tell my kids, this is what we did in Guam. This is, during typhoons, this is what we would do, and I would share that. I would share stories that my grandmother told me about, the war and what they did, what they went through, because it's so easy to lose that, right? And when you leave home and you're hustling and grinding every day here in the States, and everything is so fast paced that it's easy to lose that. Right, and it's
yeah,
and there's a reason why there's a movement today to save and to preserve the Chamorro culture and language because, of our generations and everybody moving away and our language, being left behind. And so I love the fact that, we have all these I call them the Chamorro influencers, out there talking our language and even the ones who, are not perfect at speaking it, but they're trying, and I love
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I love that hearing the younger ones talk, speak Chamorro. It just really, re- it brings me back to the good old days, like you said.
Yeah, it's one to experience. I even tell like I tell a lot of people, I'm like, eating red rice here and eating red rice at home is totally two different things. You know what I mean? And then, like, the environment you're around and stuff, I'm like, but I was like, with anything that comes of culture, right? There's always the bad side of it too, right? There's always there's always the family like bad blood, or someone talking about someone that gossip, or the blah, someone's trying to always talk about someone, on around the table. But
Right.
when it comes down to it, right, even though some families are dysfunctional on Guam, it's not like here. When families are dysfunctional here, they're dysfunctional here. They just stay dysfunctional, but back at home, when a tragedy or something happens, they all pull together,
Mm,
and it just comes full circle. And I tell someone that, holding grudges and stuff like I could do it, but
right.
by the end of the day, it's like it's very hard to, especially with family. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? And I always tell people that I'm like, there's always an ugly side to it too as well.
Right.
People do live it. So what is your what would you ever consider going back home and the knowledge you know now to educate with the land process? And because there's a lot of land issues going on in Guam, a lot of title, land, military and stuff. So the process here, would you be able to go home and teach that?
Yes, in a heartbeat, in a heartbeat. I've learned so much here in the States that, if our relatives, our family and friends knew what I knew, it makes me wonder if the land would have been kept for the Chamorro people, right? Instead of being so quick to sell and sell to outsiders as well. I see that all the time when I look at, the news back home or just looking at the real estate news feed on so much property that's being sold, and then knowing how much of the property is now occupied by an outsider, right? And it makes me sad. It makes me so sad because you don't know what you don't know. And if people who held these lands knew that you can still keep your land and still make a profit out of it without selling it. You know, you can make it so that you create generational wealth for you and your family without having to sell the land. And not so many people know that, and it's also another thing that the cost of living is so expensive that it's forced so many families to have to relocate to the States. So, and by doing that, the only way that they could do that was to sell their property, to sell their home, you know? And I wish, because me as a real estate professional, even with my clients here who call me and they want to list, they want to sell, and especially when it's after a couple years, I have to ask them, what is the motivation for selling? Why are you selling? Let's work it out. Can we have you keep the home? Can we have you rent out the home? What is going on? Because by knowing what their true issues are that's causing them to sell, it helps me to position it so that they're always winning. They're always going to be in a state where they didn't have to, right? But I understand there's some circumstances that, prevents them from doing that, right? And holding the property. But as a Chamorro and coming from Guam, where we just our land is so precious, our water, our air, and those are the things that our ancestors fought so hard to preserve, and to know that we can just sell it and put a dollar amount on it, and before you know it, that dollar amount, where does it take you? The dollar doesn't go far these days. And people don't realize that it's like, you're giving a piece of your family away, you know? And instead, why don't we educate our people? Why don't we give them the resources and the tools that they can create generational wealth? I mean, there are several wealthy families in Guam, right?
Yeah.
We know
Yeah.
this. How do you think they have been wealthy for generations after generations? You look at these families, where are their properties? And they all
Yep.
still have their
Yep.
land.
Yep,
So
like the
tell
cowboys.
me why this family is so successful. They're so wealthy, but then this other family over here who also has land, why they're not in the same position, right? And a lot of that just comes down to educating, and just educating our locals on the importance of home ownership, of land ownership, and how to make your land work for you. But what happens with our people, okay, because it's happening in my own family, is that there's that land can either bring people together or it can tear the family apart,
Yep, yep,
right?
and then you're not wrong. Like my family owned the land in Teason where the football field's at across the National Guard base. That in itself, when I went to the probate hearing, I just heard some ugly, ugly stuff go on from that. You know, I'm just like, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
Auntie be talking like, no,
Mhm.
we need this money. And then someone like, no, we should just lease it and rent it. And then we all could split it every quarter. And
Exactly.
I was like, they end up selling it, and
Where's the money now? You know,
it's all
money
gone.
is like
Yeah.
water. It's like running water. It's coming, it's flowing, but it's going down the drain, right? It's not. You don't have your own reservoir where it's constantly working for you, right? And so that's the that it right there is the knowledge that most people don't know. Why not lease it? Lease it back to the government. Lease it back to these corporations that they see the value in your property. Okay, you can make money off of my property, but guess what? I'm going to put a 99-year lease for you to occupy my property. You're going to pay me every month a percentage of whatever your business is is profiting because I need to feed my family too. Instead, so many families, because they cannot come to this agreement, some want to sell, some want to hold it, and then before you know, that property ends in probate. And everybody knows probate, and especially in Guam, it's bad out here in the States too. But once a property hits probate, forget it. That property is tied up for years and years and years. And then what happens? The heirs start passing away. And now it's like you had 15 kids that own the property. 5 of them are now deceased. Now they've got, other people that have to be considered as to what's going to happen to that land now because they've got a right now that their loved one, their mom, their dad has passed away. So now we got to deal with the grandkids of the record owner, right? The landowner. So then it becomes this mess and it becomes tied up. And before you know it, generation after generations are passing away. And here's this vacant land. What good is your land if you can't get anything from it? you know and it's not to say, we just want money. We're money, money, money hungry, but there's a reason why your ancestors left it to you. They want their children and grandchildren and great 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 grandchildren to profit off the land, whether that is harvesting the land, whether that is, building homes on the land, whatever the case is, that land is left to you as a gift. And so I feel like we need to preserve that gift that our ancestors fought so hard for. Instead of looking at it as like a now solution, we sell it, we make money off it right now.
Yeah.
Instead of that, we need to change that mindset of how can we make this land work for the whole family for generations to come. And
So
man,
that's the thing, and that's the thing, man. The laws in Guam need to change, especially on that whole air thing, probate stuff, right? Because a lot of times, like my grandma's house right now is about to undergo that same exact process. My mom had 12 siblings. My grandma and grandpa bought the house back in, I think it was the 70s, right? When they were just clearing, when they were just they're rebuilding, and it's paid off. But as my grandma and grandpa passed away, they didn't leave a will, they didn't leave nothing. They just left the
no,
deed and title
no,
to a caregiver, right? Which is my mom's youngest brother right now, that he's taking care of the land. But problematic moving forward is I've been trying to tell my mother's siblings when I went back home for my mom's funeral was that, hey, like, you guys really need to come together and like figure this land out. Like,
mhm,
I don't ever want you guys to sell it. It's everyone, if you guys saying it's everyone's land, cool, but we just need to figure out some type of chain of custody, because the last thing I want is the government taking it because of the taxes. Don't pay the taxes on it. And they're like, yeah, 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 yeah. But a lot of them live out here. So they don't even care. They're just like,
Yeah.
Sure, why not? And then the 3 siblings live in Guam, but they're, I mean, they're living paycheck to paycheck, and they're just trying to survive, which I don't blame them, so they don't have that type of money to go to the courts and file for all these conjunctions and all these other stuff, and
Mhm, mhm.
it's crazy because like, the courts will tie it up, and it'll take, like, if you cannot notify all the relatives of or family members of the deceased and their kids, like, it just takes forever, you know what I mean?
Right.
Going and it takes a lot of money. And, like, looking at the Guam laws, like, even looking at the airport, like, I was thinking the airport was publicly owned. No,
Is it
it
not?
it's
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 private.
not. It's privately owned, leased by a family. And I was thinking Tumon, where all the hotels were, I thought that was publicly owned.
Most of that is
No,
leasehold. Yep.
the
It's
is the Israel owns
family.
that property land, just like the cowboys own their property in up on the top of the hill.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's so it's like the property, it goes. And my brother purchased his house in Talafofo across the golf course, right? And man, those golf course people have been trying to bug him for a long time. Like, hey, let me buy your house. Hey, let me buy your house. My brother's like, no, I'm good. Because he knows the value of it. He's like, huh, no, like this is something I could pass down to my kids, and if my kids don't want it, we could break the house down, we can stretch it, and then we can lease it to the golf course. So my brother's thinking longevity, right? And our people, when they inherit something, they don't think longevity because they want the lifestyle, they want the fast life, right? But they don't understand, like, a lot of the properties on Guam, you're sitting at like $1 million or half a mil.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And these people coming and buying it, guess what? Now they buy it, then you turn around and be like, oh man, now I'm renting.
I was
Now you
just
become a tenant.
I don't know where I read it, where I saw it, if it was social media, and a military individual bought a property in Guam and doesn't live on the island anymore and is just leasing that shit out. He doesn't even plan to return to Guam. And I'm thinking, man, that that's it right there. That's the educational piece that we need to get out to our people that, hey, you don't have to sell that necessarily. You know what I mean? Like you can turn around and you can make that make you money. Just the same way the Chinese are doing it, the military is doing it. Everybody is profiting from our island, but our people, and there's something wrong with it right there is that when other people come in and they see the value of our island and our land and they're willing to hold on to it forever and our people are getting rid of our land, there's something wrong there. There's
I
a
mean, if you
real
look at Ipan, right? You look at Ipan and all the shoreline homes, like a lot of those families down there will never sell their beachfronts. And if they do, you're looking at a ridiculous price. Like my friend's grandpa said that a guy came wanting to buy the beachfront property in Ipan, and he was like, "Yeah, you just give me 500 million and you can have it." That's
set
how
my
much is
family up forever. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Like
he's like, "Give me 500 million."
you
The
better
guy's like,
it for your generations and generations to come that they're going to be able to be taken care of, right? And my family, so my mom, my sis is in Sinania, and so they live actually on the cliff side of Sinania. So they
Is
overlook.
that is that where the cliffside is where the local housings is into
Yes,
that road, right? So
yes.
Dylan used to stay there. Dylan, he's a fish. He was a fisherman.
Not
He,
sure.
but he,
Not
he he
sure.
passed away. They couldn't find him. He got lost in sea.
Okay.
Yeah. So his family stayed there too with Greta Barreto on the
Okay.
other side. She's a Filipino family on the other side where
Gotcha.
the cul-de-sac, where that cul-de-sac is down the
Yes.
street from that apartment.
So my grandma does live going into a cul-de-sac, and in that cul-de-sac are actually a few pretty well-known families. You got a Calvo, the Scambaluri. There's the they're not Tenorio, Santos in that cul-de-sac area. So a long time ago, my grandmother owns her house. They still own the home there. My uncle lives there, but they also own. There's another piece of property with another home on it. that was given to my uncle, the oldest of the siblings, and he ended up selling that. And now it's a Chinese that owns that house right there, and he will never sell it. Never sell it because that property right there, you want to talk millions? Yeah, it is the most gorgeous piece of property. We used to watch the fireworks, right in my grandmother's backyard because it was so clear. It was just, you just sit back there, winds blowing, with all the trees, and you could just watch the fireworks from there. But, again, it goes back to that the probate and, who actually owns the house now. And, I mean, it's the family's house, right? It's always gonna be because grandma owned it, grandma and grandpa. That's, given to the whole family. But, when people start occupying and start, calling the shots because they're taking care of the home and they're the ones here, it becomes messy, right? It's one of the things back home that tears family up is the
It does.
land. And then before you know it, nobody has a say in it because now it's
It
stuck
does.
in probate, right? So yeah, I would love to. I would love to go back and just show people and how to become homeowners, because why is it that so many of our people feel that they have to move to the States because they cannot afford a home in Guam, And so that
Yeah.
is
I bought my first home in Guam, and it was my God, it was the worst experience I've ever
I'm
encountered.
sorry.
Like, it was just because it was for one, it wasn't a buyer's market. It was, you know what I mean? So I had to pay all the upfront cost, all the closing documents, you know what I mean? I didn't have my veteran status yet, so there was a lot of other things that came with me buying a home, so it was like but my realtor was very, like, not wasn't paying attention to anything, let's just say that. Just trying to make that fast sell, and
Yeah.
I got into my first home, and then my brother was like, "Hey, did you take advantage of this? Hey, did you take advantage of that? Hey, did you take advantage of this?" I was like, "No, I just spent like $30,000 like in closing costs." And he was like, "What?" And then coming here, buying my house here in Denver, like I negotiated everything, and like I didn't pay not 1 cent. They actually owed me money at closing. You know
Closing.
what I mean? So I
Yeah.
was just like,
That's
I
healing.
learned from that I learned from my mistake, but then the process here is very, like, very easy. I
Easy.
don't know, I didn't have to do nothing. All I had to do is like, "Hey, I send you an e-signature. Can you sign this?" "Yeah,
Yes.
sure. Let me log in and sign it." "What am I signing?" "Oh, this is just the earnest money that you, deposit." "Okay, thank you. Hey, we're getting a final inspection. I got a guy that can do it. He'll be there on this day. Just do $500." "Sounds good. Here you go." Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, it was just so easy, like and the negotiation part, my realtor, she was like, "No, we're not gonna do that. No, that's not what no, we're not no, we can back out of this deal if we want to. Like, we don't
Mhm.
have to do that. Like, what do you
Mhm.
want? Do you wanna fix it or do you want us to back out?" "Okay, we'll fix it." "Wait, wait, 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 wait. He's a veteran. He's a veteran. We can't do that."
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, well, we have to do that." And then, my realtor here, she's super on it. She's even talking to the loan officer, like, "Hey, why don't you throw in another 20 grand just so that they can get stuff for the house." And so he's like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, okay, we can do that," you know? And I got everything I wanted. I
It's
came here, I'm just
so
like,
oh, yeah.
"Oh my god," and, the property so I came into the house that I bought here, we actually came in with about, like, $60,000 equity.
No.
So I'm just like,
Wow. Did you
espe
guys just buy
especially
recently?
yes, we just bought it, December last year.
Nice. Yeah.
So,
So
it's crazy because this neighborhood we live in, a lot of the houses are like almost $1,000,000. I was able to my realtor was so good that she was able to talk to the seller's realtor and said, "Hey, like, we'll do 530 real quick. We'll"
huh?
'Cause it was on
Get
the
it.
market for 120 days. We're like,
Mhm.
"What's the problem? Why is it 120 days? Why is it on the market? Like, let's make a deal." And they're like, "Oh, the electrical, this and that." I said, "Okay, well, my client will take care of that if you do 530 and they pay all the closing costs." And they're like, "Okay." You know what I mean? Like, she worked out the whole back end. I didn't have to, like, go
Yes.
back and forth with people, she just brought the deal to me and says, "Hey, we got everything we wanted.
And that's the
Here's
way it should
closing
be. Yeah.
closing at the title company next week. Done. Keys in hand." I
Yep.
was like, "Say less."
Yep.
That was, like, my experience because I was, like, going into this, I was like, "Oh, it's gonna be another repeat of Guam. I'm gonna have to make sure I have, $30,000 and this and
Mm.
that." My wife was stressing out, but then my realtor's like, "Nah, like, we're trying to get money from them. We're not trying to make you lose money." I
Make
was
you
like,
guys pay
"Okay,
more.
say less." Yeah, yeah,
Right.
so yeah,
Right.
so they were able to get everything we were able to get everything we wanted. My wife, it came before Christmas, so she was so happy, so stoked, this was her first time buying a house, so, like, she was just like, "Man,
Lovely.
what's next?" I was like, "Well, we're gonna stay in here for another year or 2, and then we're probably gonna go buy a piece of property in the mountain
Rinse
area
and
and
repeat.
just
Yep.
rent
Rinse
this."
and
Where I
repeat.
was like, "We'll never sell this." It's a destination spot. Denver's a destination spot that people will come here and rent our house
Mhm.
just to go vacation.
Exactly. And if it's not a short-term rental, you're gonna get a long-term tenant in there, you know? The key is to, right, stack those assets
Yep,
and make it pay you eventually.
correct.
And that's what, I am so just a believer on when it comes to my clients. When we go through that home buying process is because I want them to think long term. I want them to think about not stopping here. This is a stepping stone. And for a lot of first time home buyers, it's not their forever home.
It's not.
Statistics here in the states that says that a buyer, a first time home buyer, is buying another home in the next 5 to 7 years. So
Correct.
I always tell clients like this right here, this is the piggy bank. This is you getting into home ownership so that the next home is your forever home if you want it to be, but you got to start somewhere. And it may not have all the bells and whistles, it may not be the ideal location that you want to be in, but the kids are young, they're still in school. 5, 7 years from now is going to be the perfect time that then you're going to start looking at where exactly do we really want to lay our roots down. By that time, your home has appreciated enough money for you to actually now put your own down payment and get that home that you really want, and have more negotiating power. But the market right now is wonky, right? It's and it really depends because even in Arizona, city to city, can be a difference. Street to street can be a difference, right?
Mhm, mhm.
But yeah, but you have to work with people that understand this. You have to work with people that know the market inside and out. They have the strong negotiating skills. They have the right partners behind them. They know what the hell it takes to get their clients into a home with the least amount of money out of pocket if they're representing the buyer, right? Because one of the things that I was always taught early on was that it doesn't stop with you. You're not my only client. We don't just close on this transaction and then I walk away. Because you know what? You're going to refer me to your uncle, your auntie, your primas and primos, and you might be coming back in 5 to 7 years ready to buy the next property. So the relationship there never stops. I've met lots of agents out there that, like you said, with your first experience buying a home, it's a transaction. It's all right, one done, thank you. And that is just not the way I run my business, which is why I believe I have been so successful as a real estate agent, for the last 9 years is because it's a relationship. It's I'm sorry, you're stuck with me forever. It's like I'm not going away that easy, I'm always gonna come back. I'm always gonna say happy birthday, happy anniversary. Hey, how's the house, man? Like, did you guys do any upgrades? I know you said you wanted to put a pool in. It's always, I'm not saying I'm in your face 24/7, but it's about staying that top of mind, so that people will know, like, and trust you and refer you, you know? And I think that's what has made me as the go-to Chamorro realtor in Arizona and throughout, because I'm also a loan officer. I originate loans in all 50 states. So
Wow.
my reach extends beyond the Arizona borders. So somebody reaches out to me and says, "Hey Angie, can you help us buy a home, man? We want to work with you." It always is, "Man, but you know us, you know how we are, and we don't just trust anybody." And I
Especially with that amount of money.
with that amount of money, and our
Yeah.
people are very, they want to feel a certain way. They want to be they want they want somebody to take care of them that's their own. Unfortunately, that's how it is. It's like we know because you come from the same place. We know that you understand us. And I say, "Okay, that's great." And a lot of them are military, right? They're either retiring somewhere else, they're PCSing, and they want to buy a home where they're at. And I will totally help them with the loan side and partner up with the local realtor to be able to work together and close
I
the home
like
and help
that.
them find a home. And so that is what a lot of my business is as well, is military, it's the veterans that are looking for that home in whatever state they decide to reside in. I would totally help them, and I don't leave my people just because I'm doing the loan side and I'm not there physically. I am there, so I am there in the background. I speak the lingo with the real estate side. You don't get too many realtors that can speak both lingos on the lending side and the real estate side, but
Correct.
I
Yeah.
do, and I'm very involved. I make sure that they're taken care of. So when I partner with people in other states as other agents, they have to have the same type of passion. They have to have the same type of commitment that I have in order for me to partner with them,
I
because
like that.
they're an extension of me. They're an extension of my business. So in order for me to keep that client and keep them happy, I got to make sure my team is all on the same page, right? And so that is how I have been able to expand and help more Chamorros. I'm all about helping whoever comes to me and asks for help. And I don't like to say no, and I don't like to hear no. So it's like I'm going to find a solution.
Um,
Yes, I don't. It's like if one lender tells me no, and I'm a lender myself, I'm actually, we're brokers, so we have several investors. But there's certain scenarios, and this is why it's so key to know what you're doing, is because if I don't have a product, or if my underwriters can't push a deal through, I'm going to all my other partners, because I have other partners that I can, talk to a situation, talk to them about an issue. And, we're real with each other and be like, "Man, Angie, I don't know. That one credit score is really bad. Man, they've had like 10 late payments in the last, 12 months. It's going to be a really tough one." And I like that honesty, because then I'm like, all right, I know what I have to tell the buyer. I have to have that real talk with them. It's not that you can't buy now. It's just that, or that you can never buy. It's just you can't buy now. Let's work on these items first. And let me help you to get this fixed so that you're in a better situation as well moving forward and buying that
I
house,
like
right?
that, man. Angie, I really like that, and that's how my realtor was. I was very upfront with my realtor because I was like, "Hey, we got like these two things in collection. They were like $20 in collection, but I'm like, no, let me take care of that real quick before we run credit or anything, And she was like, okay, yeah, go take care of that. Took care of it. She was like, she came back with one lender, and then she was like, no, don't go with those lenders because they're just gonna try to hide something in the stipulation. Go with this lender because they're very upfront and honest. And I was like, say less, you know what I mean? And she's like, because she has that heart to heart conversation with them, like, hey, we're not trying to stay here and take money from these people. We're trying to help them build foundation that they want, and not put them in a bind later on, like 10 years later down the line.
Mhm.
And what you're doing, Andy, is awesome. That's that real talk people need, especially in this industry with buying a big purchase is doesn't shouldn't go like at ease, right? You should be like going there with I mean, you have it. Your phone's always ringing. Lot of questions. Hey, what is this? Hey, what is that? Do I qualify for this? And you're answering those questions right up front, like, hey, but you, the buyer, have to be honest with me about your credit. You have to be honest with me about your
Yeah,
payments. Then
exactly.
you can help. You can be like, wait, let's clean that up. Give it 3 months. Let your credit refresh, and then we can recircle back this. But in the meantime, go look at houses. Go look at houses you want. The price ranges from this to this, and then we'll see how much house we can get you for. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like that it's so hard it's very hard to find honest people in this industry. I've been
Yeah.
starting like, cause I worked with one realtor out here. All she wanted was like, "Are you gonna buy? So you're gonna buy? So you're gonna buy?" And then my realtor now,
Yeah.
Robin, she's just like, oh my gosh, she's just like the loveliest woman I ever met. She's like, "Hey, we can go see like 10 to 15 houses today. I don't care. I work for you. We're gonna go and see whatever house. And if there's a house not you want, we don't have to, we can pull the deal. We don't have to get that house." And she's very like upfront,
Exactly.
she's like, and we saw about like 15 houses.
Uh-huh.
I'm telling you, it was every weekend. We were just like,
15
nah,
only?
that, no.
I said 15 only?
Yeah, no, 15 houses in a weekend, like in a
Wow.
weekend. And
Yeah.
then like next weekend was another 15 houses or something would come up into her radar and she'd be like, "Hey, what do you guys think about this property?"
Let's take a
I'm like,
look.
"Oh, let's go." No, it's too
Mhm.
small. Okay, okay,
Yeah.
what do you think about this property in this area? Like, no, we don't like that area. Okay, okay, we'll wind it down to whatever area you want. I will keep them. We'll like
Yes.
look at like what houses are gonna be come online. So this was awesome, man. But Angie,
A
I
good
wanna I wanna I want
give
to ask you the
is
question I want to ask you is if you can reach out to our people, how would you and this is their first time buying a house, they're just new to the process. What is one thing you can like advice you can give them when starting the process?
so for starting process is you just got to reach out. You got to make the call because I can't help you if I don't know what your situation is, right? But when somebody contacts me and I have qualifying questions because then it gives me an idea of where they're at, what we can do, how quick we can go, what's the time frame that they need to move, how much am I working with so that I can then put together the story of them buying a home and guide them better that way, right? So anybody that reaches out to me, especially, social media is one of my number one lead generation sources, right? So people will DM me and say, "Hey, I wanna buy a house. I just don't know who to talk to, where to go." And I said, "Well, came to the right spot." And that's the first step that you have to take is just to reach out. You just have to say, "I am ready to buy a house," or I'm going to buy a house in 2 years. What do I need to do today to get myself ready? And then we can put a plan together. But yeah, that's like my number one advice to people is you just have to make that call. You just have to reach out. I have two buyers right now, exact situation. They held out calling me because they thought that they couldn't buy. One was credit issues. Well, actually, one was credit issues and the other one was credit issues and income, right? Because they had just moved to Arizona. And we went through the process. And I'm like, look, we got options. It's just a matter of what path you want to take. But both of them, they told me, I was so afraid to reach out because I thought I wasn't going to be able to buy. And that's the number one thing I hear from people is they thought they couldn't buy. And I'm like, well, you don't know what you don't know. And that's why you have to reach out to somebody that is a professional that can guide you and that can tell you what your options are. And if it's not a now, transaction, then it can be a 2 years from now, but here's your plan. Here's the goal. So yeah, so that's just my advice right there is reach out and at least get that plan in place.
Thank you so much for that, man. And it's been a very Man, it's been a blast just talking to you and knowing a lot about like what you offer our people in Arizona, but hey, in 50 states too. If they need lending and stuff, and it's super heartwarming to know that there's someone like you that actually really care about putting families in a home where they can like forever live in, but educate them too in the path they want to take. And I really thank you for taking the time to talking to me. I appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
And
And
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's been an honor and I love this. I love that there is a platform for us to speak on and to be able to reach and hopefully help more Chamorros, right? So, yeah, no, thank you, Isaac. It was fun.
It is.
We can keep